I'm Sean Manwani from Henley Business School, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Professor Barry Shaw from the University of New Hampshire. And what I'd like to ask you, Barry, is why do projects continue to fail when we know so much about what needs to make them right?
Well, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because we've done a lot of work in project management over the last 20 years, and yet projects still disappoint, and some good percentage of those fail altogether. And I think, first of all, it starts because we tend to focus on the methodology, the procedures that we undertake to complete a project. And sometimes the human element is ignored or is assumed to be of less importance.
Right, and that human element, I guess it comes down to your work on systematic biases?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I got interested in why they fail and if there are some lessons that we can learn, some common factors amongst all the failures that I've studied. And it turns out that there are. In fact, some of these systematic biases are not only appropriate for projects, but they're appropriate for other situations as well. I can think of the 1996 disaster on Mount Everest, where 5 people died, and where there was a systematic bias that occurred. So you look at the types of systematic biases, and they generally can be reduced to a set of about 5 or 6 or 7. The top few are the top few systematic biases.
Which was the one in the Mount Everest situation?
The Mount Everest was the sunk cost, the fact that the top of the mountain was in sight. They had planned a turnaround time of 1:30. Everybody had agreed on that beforehand. But what happened was everyone on the teams that were involved, the 2 teams, they had paid in the range of about $50,000 to $60,000 to go up the mountain. And what happens is that you have that in your mind all the time. You've paid so much money, you've taken so much time. The summit of the mountain is in view. You've passed your turnaround time, but if you're just a few hundred yards away, why turn around when it's taken so long to prepare, so much money to get ready? And why turn around now when, my goodness, in just a couple of hours you can plant the flag, have your picture taken, and probably be safely on the way down?
That makes a lot of sense to me. As a CIO, I saw this in organizations where people have invested a large amount of money and they were not prepared to cut the program.
That's
and
right.
You see that as well.
Yes, yeah. I mean, cutting is a difficult thing in project management, and I spent a lot of time thinking about that. When do you cut a project? In retrospect, of course, the team should have observed the turnaround time, realized that the money they had spent and the time they had spent was a sunk cost. You can't recover it. So you turn around, and of course you save your life. Merck, the same issue with Merck and Vioxx. The evidence started to mount that Vioxx created cardiovascular events. And basically they ignored it. It's not only did they suffer from the sunk cost bias, because they had spent $1 billion before they realized that they had a significant problem on their hands and an ethical dilemma, which of course was swept under the carpet for quite a while. A lot of people died, or if they didn't die, they certainly sued them. You know, there's controversy over whether Vioxx actually did it or not. So the complexity in this is to realize that even though you've spent the money and you've spent the time with Vioxx, they would have been far better off cutting their losses and moving into other areas of drug development.
So amazing stories, Barry. You've talked about situations of life and death for individuals, and ultimately life and death, for organizations if they get it wrong.
Yeah, and you would think that in a life or death situation we would be a little bit more rational, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe we become less rational in moments of high anxiety where the stakes are very high. I don't know, but this is shown time and time again. The Denver baggage handling case that I studied, where the project went on much too long. All the evidence was there. Another systematic bias, which was very noticeable there, and also, by the way, in the Merck case, was what we call conservatism bias, where you don't take in new information if it's contrary to the way in which you believe or want to believe.
Yep.
So you
Yes.
ignore it, and you
Yes.
just listen to what you have to listen. And of course, it leads to another well-known bias that people know about, most people know about, which is groupthink bias. And all of these things sort of converge to sabotage projects and, prevent, for most of us that are detached from it, that haven't spent the $1 billion, that haven't spent the 10 years in development, we say, why didn't they do that?
These are real insights, and I think very much supplements the project management literature, where it may be methodology, may be right, but as you say, the human factor is going against that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Barry. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Sean.
Professor Shaw.
Thank you.